If someone told you that you couldn't do something, would you bury your dreams and let them die? Or would you keep walking and try again? In the 1868 novel Little Women, the character of Jo March says, "I want to do something splendid. I think I shall write books. It is my greatest dream." It was a dream shared by the book's creator, Louisa May Alcott, but there was one defining point in her life where this dream reached a tipping point and could have been left dead and buried. Our tale begins in 1832 when Louisa May Alcott was born in Germantown, Pennsylvania. She was one of 4 sisters. In order, the girls were Anna, Louisa, Elizabeth, and May. Their parents were Amos Bronson Alcott and Abigail May. Bronson was a dreamer and a teacher whose progressive ideas in teaching methods were ahead of his time and frequently raised eyebrows, costing him his teaching positions. Abigail, or Abba May as she was also known, was a social worker, and the family frequently relied on whatever work she could obtain to support them. Life was hard. Food was often scarce, housing assisted by kind friends and family. In 1845, when Louisa was 12, the family moved to Concord, Massachusetts, and into a home Bronson called Hillside. Here, Louisa and her sisters spent the next 7 years growing from children into young women, playing Pilgrim's Progress, ascending to heaven on the central stairway of the home, and always reading books that included the works of Sir Walter Scott and Louisa's favorite author, Charles Dickens. Throughout these years, Louisa wrote, but work to support themselves was also required, and from a young age, Louisa and Anna worked as teachers, seamstresses, governesses, and in other positions. In 1851, 19-year-old Louisa went to work in Dedham, Massachusetts, as the companion to an invalid 40-year-old woman. An introvert, the woman preferred to be left alone, and instead, Louisa found herself at the mercy and whim of the woman's brother, who made Louisa's days miserable and full of hard labor, like chopping wood and scrubbing floors. The experience left such an impression on Louisa that in 1857 she wrote a story based upon it. Calling it How I Went Out to Service, Louisa submitted her work to Boston publisher James T. Fields, who was one half of the well-known Boston publishing house Ticknor and Fields. Fields wrote back to Louisa, "Stick to your teaching, Miss Alcott. You can't write." Disheartened but determined, Louisa kept writing, submitting more short stories to various magazines and occasionally being paid small sums for them. Of one such story, Louisa wrote to her sister Anna in an 1858 letter, "I don't know whether it is good or bad, but it will keep the pot boiling, and I ask no more." These pot boilers were little necessities that helped the family survive, and Louisa branched out into topics not suitable in polite society, but for whom a voracious audience awaited. Under the pseudonym of a man's name, A.M. Barnard, Louisa's pen swirled into the world of the melodramatic and taboo. Wild encounters with gypsies and strangers in foreign lands, high society young women and men dabbling in dubious substances and casting caution and boats to the wind, secret love affairs in castles far, far away, and more. In 1858, with help from family and friends, the Alcott family purchased the home next to the Wayside in Concord. Surrounded by apple trees, they called the home Orchard House. The March 1858 death of Elizabeth at just 22 years old left an emptiness for the family as they settled into their new home. Louisa's room was at the front corner overlooking the orchard and Main Road. Her father built her a desk between the room's front windows, and upon this she continued to write between working. In 1862, the American Civil War was underway. In a November journal entry, Louisa wrote, November, 30 years old. Decided to go to Washington as a nurse if I could find a place. Help needed, and I love nursing and must let out my pent-up energy in some new way. Winter is always a hard and dull time, and if I am away, there is one less to feed and warm and worry over. I want new experiences, and I'm sure to get 'em if I go. So I've sent in my name and bide my time writing tales to leave all snug behind me and mending up my old clothes, for nurses don't need nice things, thank heaven. December 1862. On the 11th, I received a note from Miss H.M. Stevenson telling me to start for Georgetown next day to fill a place in the Union Hotel Hospital. Miss Ropes of Boston was matron, and Miss Kendall of Plymouth was a nurse there, and though a hard place, help was needed. I was ready, and when my commander said march, I marched. Upon Louisa's arrival, the hospital director of nurses wrote in her own journal, "We are cheered by the arrival of Miss Alcott from Concord. The prospect of a really good nurse, a gentle woman who can do more than merely keep the patients from falling out of bed." Louisa was soon put in charge of a ward of 40 patients located in the hotel ballroom. She wrote in her journal, "I never began the year in a stranger place than this, 500 miles from home, alone, among strangers, doing painful duties all day long, surrounded by 300 or 400 men in all stages of suffering, disease, and death manner." The hotel had been hastily converted to a hospital. Ventilation and lighting were poor, and the horrors inside its walls unescapable. Louisa wrote of the unspeakable odors, sight of men without arms and legs, the sound of heavy feet, and the urgent shouts of doctors, nurses, and orderlies. Like many of the patients in the close quarters, Louisa soon fell gravely ill with typhoid. Unable to continue working, she was sent home to Concord, Massachusetts, but her recovery would never fully come, for she was treated with calomel, a medicine of the day containing mercury, and that likely left her suffering permanent side effects from mercury poisoning. When she was well enough to hold a pen again, and needing money to help her family, Louisa turned letters she had written home to her family about her experiences as a nurse into 4 short sketches. Based on herself, the main character and narrator was called Nurse Tribulation Periwinkle. The 4 tales were accepted for publication by the Boston Commonwealth, an abolitionist magazine edited by family friend and fellow Concordian Franklin Benjamin Sanborn. These hospital sketches were published between May and June of 1863. The sketches of life inside a Union hospital caught the eye of editor Thomas Niles, who worked for the Boston publisher Roberts Brothers. Niles asked Louisa if Roberts Brothers could publish her hospital sketches together in a book. Roberts Brothers had been a well-established bookbinder who were now turning to publishing books themselves, but their reputation as publishers was still growing. Louisa turned down Mr. Niles and instead went with a better-known Boston publisher, James Redpath, to publish the 4 tales in a book she called Hospital Sketches. But Thomas Niles did not forget the writing of this intrepid young woman who continued to publish short stories in various magazines that crossed his path. In 1865, Louisa accepted a job as a traveling companion to a wealthy and invalid Boston woman in need of both Louisa's nursing skills and companionship. With her, Louisa spent over a year visiting Europe and the United Kingdom. In Switzerland, Louisa met a young Polish freedom fighter named Ladislas Wisniewski, who she nicknamed Laddie. Louisa ventured out on her own and spent 2 weeks in Paris with Laddie, of whom she wrote about in her journal, but whose passage she later crossed out so forcefully that her pen tore the page. In May 1866 journal entry, she wrote, "A pleasant journey. Laddie waiting for me in Paris to take me to my rooms at Madame Dine's. A very charming fortnight there, the days spent in seeing sights with my laddie, the evenings in reading, writing, hearing my boy play or resting. Saw all that I wished to see in a very pleasant way, and on the 17th, reluctantly, went to London. In London, Louisa visited Fernville's Inn where Charles Dickens wrote the Pickwick Papers, and went to hear her idol read in public.
Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by...
By July of 1866, Louisa was back in Concord, Massachusetts, home at Orchard House, caring for her ill mother and continuing to write short stories for small amounts of pay here and there. In 1868, Louisa's father, Bronson Alcott, approached Mr. Thomas Niles to pitch a fairy book that Louisa wanted to publish. Niles said no, but he wanted something else. As Louisa wrote in a May 1868 journal entry, "Father saw Mr. Niles about a fairy book. Mr. Niles wants a girl's story, and I begin Little Women. Marmee, Anna, and May all approve my plan, so I plod away, though I don't enjoy this sort of thing. Never liked girls or knew many except my sisters, but our queer plays and experiences may prove interesting, though I doubt it." As she had done in hospital sketches, Louisa based Little Women on the real-life experiences she shared with her sisters while living at the hillside, or Wayside, in Concord. She called her family the March family. Anna became Meg, she, Louisa, Jo, Elizabeth, Beth, and May, Amy. Her Polish friend Laddie became the March girl's next-door neighbor, Laurie Lawrence. And inspired by Charles Dickens, the March girls formed their own Pickwick Club, and Meg read Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe. Louisa wrote in her journal in June of 1868, sent 12 chapters of Little Women to Mr. Niles. He thought it dull, so do I, but work away and mean to try the experiment, for lively, simple books are very much needed for girls, and perhaps I can supply the need. Supply the need, yes, but not forgetting her own interests. Into the pages Louisa wove the dramatic plays and tales of witches mixing poisons and seeking revenge, knights on horseback with only a sword and shield to make their way in the world. Journal entry, July 15th. Have finished Little Women and sent it off, 402 pages. May is designing some pictures for it. Hope it will go, for I shall probably get nothing for morning glories. Very tired, head full of pain from overwork, and heart heavy about Marmee, who is growing feeble. The answer soon came in August of 1868. Wrote Louisa in her journal, "Roberts Brothers made an offer for the story, but at the time advised me to keep the copyright, so I shall." August 26th. Proof of whole book came. It reads better than I expected. Not a bit sensational, but simple and true, for we really lived most of it, and if it succeeds, that will be the reason of it. Mr. Niles likes it better now, and says some girls who have read the manuscripts say it is splendid. As it is for them, they are the best critics, so I should be satisfied. Little Women, Part First, was published on September 30th, 1868. The first edition contained 4 illustrations created by Louisa's young sister May. Without expendable income, May had not had many formal art lessons at this time, and the pictures were labors of love to support her sister Louisa's novel. Within a month, the book's fate, and indeed the fate of Louisa's entire family, became clear. Louisa wrote in her journal, October 30th, 1868, "Saw Mr. Niles of Roberts Brothers, and he gave me good news of the book. An order from London for an edition came in. First edition gone, and more called for. Expects to sell 3,000 or 4,000 before the new year. Mr. Niles wants a second volume for spring. Pleasant notices and letters arrive, and much interest in my little women, who seem to find friends by their truth in life, as I hoped. November 1st began the second part of Little Women. I can do a chapter a day, and in a month I mean to be done. A little success is so inspiring that I now find my Marches sober, nice people, and as I can launch into the future, my fancy has more play. Girls write to ask who the little women marry, as if that was the only end and aim of a woman's life. I won't marry Joe to Lori to please anyone. November 17th. Finished my 13th chapter. I am so full of work I can't stop to eat or sleep or for anything but a daily run. November 29th. My birthday. 36. Spent alone, writing hard. January 1869. Paid up all the debts, thank the Lord, every penny that money can pay. And now I feel as if I could die in peace. My dream is beginning to come true, and if my head holds out, I'll do all I once hoped to do. The Alcott family was at last financially secure. They would not lack for food, warmth, or stability again. Louisa was able to help her father build Hillside Chapel, the Concord School of Philosophy, in the backyard of Orchard House, where he could be at home with transcendentalists and fellow teachers who, as their deceased young friend Henry David Thoreau might have said, marched to the beat of their own drummer. May Alcott could at last travel the world and formally study art abroad, becoming a talented and up-and-coming artist, with 2 of her portraits gaining the honor of being exhibited in the Paris Salon and the London Ladies' Exhibition. When Anna's husband John Pratt suddenly died, leaving Anna with 2 young boys, Louisa wrote Little Men, a sequel to Little Women. Published in 1871, the profits of Little Men secured Anna and the boys' future, and the book was eventually followed by another sequel, Joe's Boys, which concluded the March family tale. More books followed, and at the same time, Little Women continued to be published around the globe. Today, Little Women has been translated into over 50 languages. 4 big-screen, major-motion film adaptations have been made, and television, stage, and opera adaptations have been produced. The Alcott's Orchard House is now a beloved museum open to the public. Visit them in person at 399 Lexington Road, Concord, Mass., or virtually via their website at louisamayalcott.org. And the Wayside, now owned by the U.S. National Park Service, is open seasonally. Located in Concord Center, Barrow Bookstore specializes in the works of Louisa May Alcott and other Concord authors. American and international copies of Little Women frequently grace the shelves, waiting to visit with guests or be acquired by new owners. And whether you visit us here in Concord or roam the world wherever you are, let Louisa's Little Women be a reminder to hold on to your favorite dream. Abide the critics, improve if you must, but don't give up. Keep walking and keep trying, and hear Louisa's words. As I still live, there is more for me to do.